well respected. And just so you know, we're going to have a lot of question and answer time. So if there's something that you want to ask the panelists, please prepare for that. I want to just have Ed and Ted talk a little bit so you get to know who they are. And then right after that, we're going to go into some question and answer. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say and what engages you. One of the greatest issues, and Dr. Mullins brought this up earlier, a relationship brought this all together. This is a lot of business is based in relationships. And I can't think of a better person or persons to talk about it than the two at the end here. Ed Fantegrossi has built an empire on relationships. And I'd like, Ed, if you could maybe give us a little bit about the importance of relationships and how that's impacted your life from when you were coming up, and now how it impacts on others' lives because you realize the value of relationships and giving back in that way.
Sure. Well, two disclaimers. When it was explained that we were like the best in the world, we're part of the 1,000 top in the world, maybe. So that's the first thing as a disclaimer, and that's when we actually cull it down and make it really narrow so that we can be in that ranking. The second thing is I'm glad to be part of the stool, the Ed, Ted, and Ed stool. So glad to be on it. That said, I'm looking at the room. I'm looking at some of the dads sitting in the room and the parents, and this thing about relationships. I grew up without a dad, so it was a different thing. I didn't have anyone giving me some of the roadmap elements, but in this room, likely some of the students here are students in which their parents were professionals, and lovingly, the parents want the best for their kids. Ed and I were talking as we were walking, want the best for our kids. So, of course, we're going to use all of our relationships to try and help out in that area. Then there are others that don't have those relationships, and they have to do a different kind of a learning curve. So, when talking about relationships, there's no CEO of any corporation anywhere that isn't using a relationship in some way to either control market share or do something in some way, in some form. It is all about relationships. It starts in this room. How everyone in their dorm room gets along with somebody else, and so over the course of it all, you start off in school, and the next time you look up, it's 5 or 7 years later, and you're a young Turk in some form in some area of business world, and what do you turn around and do? And you notice that you have some friends that are there, and now you're thinking you can conquer the world. Again, it's all relationships. You've gained a skill base. You've gone to school. You've done the most important thing that I think universities are supposed to do if you've done it right. You've learned how to learn. Because readying yourself for what's going to happen over and over and over and over again for decades to come is all about how well you can interpret and script and then put it together for the next campaign of achieving whatever goal, whether inside the nice safe confines of a corporation or out there on the skinny branches of being an entrepreneur. I'm looking around, I'm seeing some head nodding just because there's substantiation from it, but for you as the students, you have to start off with what really makes a relationship. Are you capable of honoring your word? I use it in a different way. I say, are you capable of hugging? Because you actually really have to look at the other person as if you've known them for 20 years. Treat them that way with an expectation of them doing it in reverse back to you. With another disclaimer that recognizes that because there was no guidance, I have a lot of scars on me from looking through and seeing all the ones that didn't deserve that you became a statistic in some form. You evolve if you didn't have the guidance, or if you're wise, you realize how smart your parents are. And you actually take it in and take that data in. Throw away some of the other things that you're getting attacked saying, why aren't you putting your clothes away? Oh, by the way, do you know that you can get an edge on this or that? So it's in the blur of all of that dialogue, but it's still about relationships. Your parents have earned the relationships. We're constantly earning our relationships. But it is really about that first step of you gathered the data. You're going to go out as a label. You're going to sit in one of the phylums of some industry in somewhere, or the financial community or something else, or even entrepreneurial. But at the end of the day, what is going to refine you, that's going to give you the difference from sameness of everybody else in the blur, is going to be what's internal to you that you're going to emit in the silence of a telephone call in between having presented all of the business information necessary to present. You're going to emit it by, at the time when it's really your company that can't do really what you need to do, and you're going to tell them, I'm sorry, the best that I can do is I can bring you close to the number, and that's it. But I can do A, B, or C. So now all of a sudden, it's going to be that creativity inside of you of the rest. But what I will guarantee you, and I shared this earlier, what I will guarantee you is, I will guarantee you that I'm not going to let you down. They're not going to believe you, because they've heard that, and then 10 minutes later they heard, let's go play golf. Because it's part of the system and the rhythm of it. But when you can define yourself past the blur, and they actually get to see that this is who you really are, relationship turns into not just an opportunity. It turns into a life path and a journey in which more and more and more of those people that you were nice to and you treated as if they've been friends for 20 years are all of a sudden now in a different position, and they remembered the you. You know, there's a little sidebar. Q and I met 25 plus years ago as two thugs exercising in a gym. And so I looked like a Smurf. I always had a hood on and was exercising, and I didn't talk much, and he didn't talk much.
You're not telling them about the spandex pants?
No. I always wore spandex pants to exercise in, because nothing else, everything was like closed out, and so anyway, that was so it was what I wore, and he actually became friends with this guy because we both could do what we needed to do in the gym. We were both capable. And fortunately, as he said, he was in the FBI. Fortunately, I never said, hey, do you want a Coke? And bringing a Coke can, because I probably would have been up against the wall. But we created our relationship with humor and integrity. It wasn't about what do you do first. It was about the human being and the friendship. And then lo and behold, everything else unfolded. And I was sharing earlier also about relationships. If you leave here and you've learned a bunch of data, and it looks good for the very small little resume that you have that you then bring out and you go to show people, and the different things that you did in the summers, and you manage to get a job, now you've left the tiny little pond and you're in this giant ocean, and none of that's going to matter. It's going to be all about the ink incorporation between your ears and in your heart. And that's going to be what's going to cause the rest of it to work. And there's a lot of bad dudes that are going to be out there. There's going to be dudes in a small sense that are going to be in a small environment surrounding you in your local workplace, each of them seeking to outdo you, whether they ever let you know it or not. And then there's going to be other things going on, and you're going to pick which club you're going to be in because they look like they're going to make it, and you find out that one didn't win in the battle of the rock stars, and now all of a sudden you're left out in the cold, and you're part of the group that's right-sized. So all of these things are all about what relationships are about. But if you have it between your ears, meaning that you absorb the data, you've learned how to learn, you continue to refine yourself in what you're doing, you're honest with every person, it's an easy statement. Go and do it. Just go and do it. You're honest, really, with everyone, as if they're 20-year relationships, because they're going to nod at you, they're going to smile at you, and you think that you've outsmarted them. You haven't. It may not be that moment, but it'll be a little bit later on, and you've lost them. There's no coming back from that. Or you've won them forever, and they're your relationship for all the things you do. Now, if you're in the category that's an entrepreneur, which was my area, and you manage to fit, as Yolanda said, we're sort of the opposite from what would be trained normally in the business school, but you manage to fit the persona of who you are, whether trained, for me, my dad, that one is too, trained by your mom about that integrity, whatever it may be. So if you manage to take that persona and then have it emit itself in the course of the things that you're doing in business, and you turn around and you have good ideas. And those good ideas are just an accident of constantly listening, learning how to learn. And then you translate them into vehicles, as in the case with Dr. Riley up here and I. One of my initiatives, I started a nonprofit foundation because I was in the business of building data centers. And, you know, and being at the Friars Club in New York and doing the typical business warm-up with an attorney that was going to be a business partner on a property we were buying to land a submarine cable in San Luis Obispo, we needed warm-up conversation. He was telling me he was representing MCI, which is a telco in the US, and I said, hey, you know, don't let them get away with it. What you do is say to them, you know, if you wanted to go through the town faster, ask them if they'll donate a fiber pair to Cal Poly. And I said, if they go along with that, I said, you've just benefited the entire community. Well, it worked, it succeeded, and now, you know, 13 years later, it turned into a foundation because I kept sharing, let's not have this be a club isolated to just a few. I wanted it to be something that was global. And with Dr. Riley's help, we actually were able to have assets at one stage that covered 2/3 of the globe. Fiber optic connectivity and technology infrastructure that we allow universities to use for free for research and ed and healthcare. Now, that's coming from doing nothing more than making certain that it's real and having a thought and a process and an integrity to carry it through. Now, I was only doing it because what I build data centers, and my tenants are like Google, or somebody was about to work for Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley. So we build these facilities, and some of them we own, a lot of them we just build for them, and they just want the keys. But inside of it, I had a sense that something else could be done. So I used relationships to then help to cause the change to happen, like that attorney, not let them get away with it, and then used relationships to then expand the donations. Dr. Riley was in the Netherlands when we landed a subcable in the northern part of the Netherlands, a place called Eemshaven. And while we were all high-fiving, you know, one of the leaders, the head of global infrastructure for Tycom, kept going outside for cigarettes. So I followed him outside for one of his cigarette breaks in the rain. And I said, you know, Pete, how'd you like to donate to make a change on the planet? And that started, so we created donations across the Atlantic and Pacific. And all because he had trusted me to then move forward to change a submarine cable landing that was supposed to go to northern Germany and have it land in Eemshaven in the Netherlands. And it worked. It worked brilliantly. It got finished on time. And it was at that moment that I'd earned the moment for that conversation. Relationships, integrity of performance, being consistent is really what it's about. Now, the entrepreneur absolutely, positively cannot hide behind systems and labels. You can't. There's just you. You are the label, and you emanate every single second, and you do anything wrong once, and it's over all around. It just happens. So, I'm Italian, so this went on a lot longer than it should. But that said, it is really relationship. Not something you put as a check off saying, oh, I've earned this relationship, it's now done. When you take the responsibility of creating a friend, it is 24/7 for years and years and years to come. If it's a real friend, they're not going to abuse it, and it's your skill-based learning curve in which you're going to understand those that are the takers and those that are the friends. And with all of that, I wish everybody the blessing of that kind of an experience and those kinds of relationships.
So you have to understand, when Ed and I speak, which is, you know, every week, I put aside 3 hours. Because this is how it goes. We talk for a long time, but they're always great conversations. And Ed, he lives what he preaches. He does have 300 photos of families from around the world around his office at home, all friends, all family members to him. He does live it.